This is a piece I did taking some input or insight from Michael and his segmenting demonstration. And I wanted to try to create, I guess what you call a chaos type vase or urn. You guys have probably seen people doing like chaos bowls. They do all kinds of wood together and do different things. And I wanted to use a variety of woods. And basically what I ended up doing is laminating four different woods or five different woods in about 4 or 5 different configurations, and cut the segments and tried to do them as random as I could.
Success.
Yeah, it never turns out how you exactly want, but I learned a lot doing it. And originally started to form this is going to be a tall, kind of narrow base, and as I got adding the rings, I kept turning and doing the inside and everything, I thought, well, this could also become an urn. So I earned a lid. It can be either of the two. But it's made out of it's got maple and ash and purple heart, cherry, maple wood bits inside of it all. But
it looks
just
really
finished
good.
with the friction polish.
Ron, did you make the top of it, not the cap, but the top of the urn vase with the rest of it, or did you put that on afterwards? Because you said you started out to make a vase out of it, but
Yeah, closed form base. So the top and the bottom are actually solid pieces. They're not segments.
Yeah.
And then once I was drilled a little hole, was going to put a kind of test tube thing in it, and I said that needs to look bigger, and then got bigger, and then I said, well, I'll put a lid on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great, Ron. Did you use a wedgie sled, or did you cut using the miter saw?
No, I used a wedgie sled. I had made one of those several months ago. Met a guy at the NC State Craft Center who was doing some of this type of work, and so the first thing you need to do is make one of these pictures, and Jake. So that's what I did.
Nice. Looks great. It's got that, it's almost like that 60s, and I mean that in a good way, that 60s chaotic with the colors. It looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice. For some reason, I mean, part of it's the photography. It's nice and sharp too. I mean, it looks really nice.
Thanks. That
no gaps there at all. The lines are nice and clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what I've learned in doing some of the segmenting is that those joints, you really got to nail the angle. Slight bit off, you get a little gap, and it stands out.
Sorry.
I noticed that, and I wanted to acknowledge. Yeah, I don't see any seams at all. Beautiful job. Well done.
Want to show the other photo?
Yeah. Did you create like 4 layers per ring and then alternate them? Is that correct?
Yeah. So again, I took each segment or each ring is made of 4 laminated 1/4 inch, a little bit over 1/4 inch thick woods. So I did about 5 or 6 of those different configurations, and then cut them all, basically at the same time, and randomly mixed up the rings as well. Random is not totally true, but mixed them up to make sure I was getting variation as I constructed the actual rings.
Yeah, nice.
One last question. It looks great. Did you have to use a steady rest?
I did not actually. I turned the inside and sanded as I went.
Good thinking.
Yep. Yeah, I've actually just built one of those. I have to get with the mount to attach it to my lathe, but if I was going to hollow that thing at once, I think it definitely needed, because it's about 10 inches long overall.
Yeah, I was going to ask whether you could take each of those 4 decks and go in with a Forstner and get it centered pretty well, and just drill them out as you went. No inside turning needed.
You need a pretty big Forstner bit because it's about 4 inches in max diameter. depending on the, unless you just wanted to do like a 2-inch center core hole or something like that, I guess you could do that.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, you don't need a Forstner the size of the whole thing, but just the
Right.
inside, and looks like you can get away with, a couple inches. Yeah. Okay, just saying.
Well, the other thing too, Ron, is you could put a chuck on each tenon on each end of it and not glue the middle of the whole rings together, right? And then
Yeah.
hollow out each of the two pieces, then finalize, glue them, and then clean
Yep.
it up.
That's kind of, I think Michael demonstrated that.
Yeah. Yep.
That's-
Yep.
Yep.
All right, great.
Yeah, but I would add like 2 or 3, I think it's like 7 total rings. And I did like 2 at a time, would quickly hollow it out and then center and mount the next couple, and then worked it out that way.
Yeah. It's too chaotic for me to count the number of rings.
Well, what I like about the chaos of it is you chose to keep the 4 sets aligned instead of staggered. That's part of the chaos of it. It's really,
Yep.
it has an interesting effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I think
Hey,
it's
well, thank you.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it could spark a lot of ideas. That to do it other ways too would look really cool.
If you go back, Ted, one thing I did
Sure.
get, why I went with that 4 layers per segment, so pure laziness, because I was going to do like 1/4 inch thick wedges or segments the whole way, which would have been a hell of a lot more intricate gluing and everything. So that's where I had the idea, just to laminate
Yeah.
strips together to do it that way. So,
Yeah. It would take a lot longer because you have
Yeah.
to wait for the glue ups, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now you got some other great stuff here.
Yeah, this was your tease. Everyone wanted to hear about this one last month, and you weren't here.
no, I got stuck traveling at an airport. So these are, I got this idea. I saw a guy on YouTube. His name was Frank. I think it's D. Damasio or Demizio, doing this kind of flat vase. I thought that's pretty cool. Then I thought about how to embellish it and stuff, and I've got a lot of 8-quarter kiln drying lumber of different kinds, and said rather than continue to make 2-inch diameter spindle work or 2-inch thick high bowls, I would try something different with the other dimensions. Decided to try working out a process to do this on my lathe with the tools I have, and do inlays of various kinds on it. So the largest one there is just simply maple and walnut. The middle one is ambrosia maple, a cherry segmented ring, and a resin center to that ring. And the smallest one is just walnut and ambrosia maple. I've actually did several more of these. One I just finished is done with offcuts from a end grain cutting board. It kind of has like a brick wall pattern to it, but it's in this shape and form. But biggest thing for me was to work out the process.
Is this a lost wood piece? You had a piece in the middle that you discarded?
No, so it is not hollow. It is only cored through the center where the bud base or the stems go. So I basically start out the blank is, start out with a rectangle piece of, this is 8-quarter lumber, mark out the diameter that I wanted, and then actually draw a tenon on one end or one side of it. So when I cut that out on a bandsaw, you've got, circular shape and a tenon. And I would chuck the tenon up and drill. The first thing I did is drill the center hole on the edge, and then rotate it, mount it to a glue block, do all the turning and inlay work. And I let a vacuum chuck and then flip it to do the finished back side of it on the back. If that makes sense. If anybody wants to know, I had a lot of people ask me how to do this. I posted on a Facebook thing. I created a quick video, a YouTube video, first one I've ever done, more like a PowerPoint thing, but it takes you through the steps that I actually use.
But Ron, if you just summarize that in a couple of sentences, the center, for example, the dark walnut, that's just a thin inlay that you put into the maple piece.
That's correct. So, basically once I had it turn around and the whole core or the whole cord and then turn around and then mounted to a glue block. I used, parting tool and at the size a tenon a mortise space, and then inset the walnut. So walnut's only about maybe about 3/8 inch thick at the most.
Ron, are you Ron Patterson on Facebook or some other name?
Yep.
Because there's a few. So
I have you want the link here? Anybody want it, or
Yeah, throw it in the chat if you would.
I can do it after. I'll post it when we're done talking here.
And real
Again,
quick,
it's the first time I ever did a video,
Great
so
choice
no
of-
comments on that.
Great choice of grasses and flowers to complement the pieces. I really like the smallest one, the ambrosia maple on walnut. And what did you do with the finish to make the walnut grain show so well?
So it is finished first in I used the Axe, abrasive sanding paste, and then first they did with sanding sealer, homemade sanding sealer, then the Axe paste and polish. That's all that's there.
Looks great.
Thanks.
I like the middle piece too, Ron, and because the ambrosia maple, when you first look at it, those two streaks of ambrosia maple off that center ring right there makes it look like it's got movement.
Yeah.
Like it's those are things spinning out on the outside of it or something. I don't know. It looks really cool.
Yeah, I kind of when it just happened to work out that way, and they're almost like tangential to the center segment or the center ring.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
Because they're opposing and they're offset a little bit, and they're aligned with each other. It looks like they're coming off of that like a weed eater or something type thing spinning.
Yeah. And for those of you who said they like the flowers and grass, those are really expensive. At the special order them at any Dollar Tree.
Nice.
But yep. So I continue to make these. A lot of family net like them. So, and they're, like I said, once you get the process down, it's pretty straightforward.
Ron, since people talk about what they like, I like that it's a set of 3. For some reason, I found that too, that to have 3 of a piece that have a similar shape but different sizes makes it look like a piece of, like an ensemble of art rather than the individual pieces. And it appeals to me a lot.
Appreciate that.
Same with me.
I didn't start out with that intention, but after I got 3 of them together, thought they do arrange decent for photos. So.
Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing more of it. Since you got the
Okay.
process down, they're really attractive.
Well,
Appreciate
Stefan,
that.
you're right about the 3 thing. That's just a standard theme in art. It always works to have 3 trees, 3 anything. So good of you to point that out.
Photography and lighting and shading is beautiful too.
So I don't know if I told you guys before, after joining the club here and getting into the turning a couple of years ago, I spent a whole $99 on Amazon and got a photo box 2x2 kit with lighting and backdrops and use that. And I like the gray. I haven't even tried other colors yet.
Are the opposite faces just plain wood, or are they also inlaid?
They're plain wood. The inlay is only on the one side, doesn't go through the center.
And Ron, are you using some glass inserts or plastic inserts that one can actually put water into them and real flowers? Because they
Yeah,
exist
they're,
as well, and that's pretty nice.
Yeah, Stefan, they're I'm using plastic, not glass, but they're a plastic test tube like thing that I bought on Amazon.
All right. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah,
you guys doing it.
I just got 5 of the glass tubes from Craft Supplies. And of course, the first thing I did was jam one of the 5 into a form and broke it. So Plastic is a good idea.
Yeah,
I would,
I've actually done that on other bases, more spindle base type things where you really got to make sure you got that whole poured out, because I've jammed it in before, and I actually had one piece of wood that was not totally dry and put one in and ended up cracking the plastic.
So did I, because when the wood dries, it shrinks, and if
Yeah.
you've got that too tight there, I've had a couple of glass tubes just crack, so it ruins the whole thing. Plastic is the way to go.
You ought to try turning some candle holders with glass chimneys, a little bit wet. And then when the wood dries, it captures the chimney. You can't get the chimney off anymore.
All right.
All right, I'll post that
Gene's
link.
not-
Thank you,
Gene's not
guys.
here. I just tried calling his number.
Okay.
His voicemail's full.
Well, thanks, Gene. We'll have to pull that into next month, I guess, as well. Stefan.
Yes, so this is a box elder vessel, and about 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, one of the WGNC board members in Raleigh had some box elder that had a tremendous flaming red in it. And maybe it came from Mike Smith. But ever since that time, I've been looking for box elder, and I've put the word out to the people I know. And 2 weeks ago, I got a call in the afternoon or a text from one of the professional woodturners from Bartlett Tree Service, who had driven by a property here in Chatham County where a tree was being cut down. And he drove at 45 miles an hour and yet identified the tree as a box elder tree. The tree was somewhat dead, already half cut down. So he texted me, and that same evening I drove by to talk to the owner of the property. And then 3 days later on the weekend, I drove by to get what was the biggest pieces of it. It was a tree that was about 40 years old, and box elder doesn't live all that long, so probably it reached its end. It had some damage in the sapwood, which you see there's some wormholes, real small ones, which are filled with rosewood dust and CA glue, which I like to do rather than leave the holes as holes. And I turned this vessel, which you see is about 9 inches tall, about that tall. I left much of the bark in, and I hollowed it out to relatively thin as I could. And I've been pretty happy with it. The finish is a walnut oil finish. I finished another piece with sealer cell, and then on top of that, I put carnauba wax, which I often like, but it gave the whole thing a yellow tinge, which I didn't like that much. So this time I used walnut oil, and on another piece, tung oil, and I like the finish. It doesn't give it the yellow that the carnauba wax did. Or maybe it just looked yellow on the images, I must say, on the photography with the light. And this is from the top, and you see there's some of the reddish area that gives a flaming red in the box elder. It's not all that extensive, but it didn't really matter to me. I was surprised how nice the wood is, how much internal structure there was. And the red turns brown anyway with UV light exposure after a few months or so, and you cannot prevent that. At the moment, it looks nice with the reddish, but even when that turns brown, I think it has a lot of individual character.
Nice.
Looks great, Stefan.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's
And if-
interesting that the tung oil and the walnut oil didn't discolor it like the carnauba wax did. I would have thought it'd been the opposite.
Well, Ted, so I have to say it did. So the plain wood is pretty pale, which surprised me, but you don't see these internal structures. And if you go back, this wood has a lot of internal waviness, for example, or to the left, or at the bottom
right
you see
there.
it.
Yeah.
And it comes out more when you finish it. And I have to correct myself. The carnauba wax did not make it more yellow than the walnut. It's just the photography because the light reflects so much of the canuba wax that the
Okay,
whole image changes color. And I'm sure you can play with it, and John Vaith would be able to do that.
yeah,
But the
okay,
photography looks better with walnut oil and with the tongue oil.
yeah.
So Stefan, what walnut oil are you using? Is that Mahoney's or is that Doctor's?
It's the Mahoney's walnut oil.
You really ought to try Doctor's Wood Shop. If you just hold the two bottles up next to each other, the Mahoney's is brown and Doctor's Wood Shop is almost clear. And when that's the stuff that I like to use because it's so light that it really pops the contrast. You know, it doesn't yellow the highlights, but really richens the shadows really nicely.
Thank you for that comment. I will try that.
Very nice.
And I love that you left the bark inclusions.
Yeah, that's
More
been a
we-
development over the last 2 years or so. I mean, and probably many have gone through that too. Initially, when I started turning, I wanted it to be symmetrical and looks just perfect. And then increasingly, I've recognized, which is not that surprising, that the natural inclusions and the asymmetry gives it more character.
I agree.
That's-
What is that, Ted? That wabi
Wabi
sabi?
sabi.
Yep. There we go. Another wabi sabi for the win.
Yep. So Stefan, you're familiar with that, right? Wabi sabi?
Oh, I am, yes.
All right.
So this is the same box eld, and by the way, box eld is a type of maple. So this is the same box elder tree, and typically I rough turn pieces and then I fine turn them after a year or 2 or 3. But I was so curious to see what this would look like. So both the piece that we just saw a minute ago and this piece, I turned completely wet to finish to relatively thin. This is just another form that I tried with some bark inclusion. There's some redishness. You see the size there, it's also 9.5 inches. And this is the bottom, which is just stunning. Not the way I turned it, but the way the wood is, this feathery edge. And you see there's a heartwood there, the redishness, brownishness, much of the paleness, the paleness is the sapwood, and then you see the feather in the middle, which has a lot of character throughout.
Yeah, that feather's beautiful.
Yeah,
did-
I love the feather. That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I didn't appreciate that at first in the piece of wood. I saw there was some structure, but because it was relatively, it's a very soft wood. It flakes out. So when you cut it with a bandsaw or the chainsaw, you don't really see the structure of the wood that well. So if I hadn't known about this, I might have changed that this would be the top and the other side would be the bottom, because this is just so stunning. But I like it the way it is as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, as you can see, there's some figures in the wood here, you know, like that really looks cool too. So I'm sure if it was a top-down view of this, you would see, you know, there'd be beauty in that as well, besides what we're seeing now. So, but that feathering is pretty wonderful.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I think on that top view, what we're looking at there, that's they call that reaction wood, which is really what that's what makes the figuring, right? It gives it that the way it scatters the light in that so cool way. So yeah, I mean, if you had turned it upside down, obviously, and had the feathering going across the top, that would have been you know, I haven't done very well at predicting exactly where the feathering is going to come through, you know, especially at the point where I have the chainsaw in my hand and, you know, trying to do the best job. And but so I like this second piece better than the first piece, actually, Stefan. I like the shape much better. Maybe that egg thing wasn't working for me the way this is. Anyway, they're both beautiful though. Well done.
Is
Hey,
this a- is
Stefan,
this
in
from a-
my normal, usual way, I'd like to say, if you vacuum chuck that from the other side and then softened up that foot, rounded it off a little bit, and then flip it over and make a foot that plugs the hole and then turn it over. Hey, but you know how I look at things, a little strange there, but that's a workaround. You can just make a removable plug and do it either way, but
It's
that'd be kind of cool.
gorgeous. Leave it as is, please.
Yeah.
I think
Stefan,
that's just a wonderful surprise when you would pick the piece up. and
Yeah.
look at the bottom.
yeah, and Stefan, this is a crotch piece, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
do you have the other half of the crotch?
Well, so the tree, I don't know, maybe I do. I have to look through it. The tree was a tree trunk, and you can see it on my Instagram account, what it looked like. It had multiple branch things
Mhm.
coming off. And it was rotten in some pieces, so when I wasn't with a chainsaw, I cut off the pieces that were still good. So I don't know where the other side is. I'll see whether I still have it.
Yeah, well, anyways, if you can find it, then you can just do another one and
I will.
make the feather the top this time, because that's
So the
probably from the center, right? Of the
Yeah.
log.
The challenge with this piece for me personally has been twofold. Number one, when I hollow it out to get all the way to the perimeter of the circle inside,
Yeah,
takes a piece that needs to curve around quite a bit.
yeah,
So my thinness is good everywhere except at the equator of the piece,
yeah.
which makes the piece heavier than I would like it to be. I need some more special tools to do that. So that's number one. And number two, the challenge is when I turn it, I didn't want to bring out my, whatever the device is called, that is this long metal thing that is really solid. So I just used a handheld tool at first, and then once you get too deep inside, obviously it moves quite a bit, and then it destroys the opening. So I had to change the shape of the opening a couple of times because the initial idea, the tool had flipped off and broken off the top.
Yeah, it sounds like you need a Trent Bosch stabilizer.
Something like that. I have a stabilizer from some other, the Lyle Jamieson one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, no. The Trent Bosch really works well, because you just have a gate for the tool that's not going to let it go all the way to the wall of the mouth there. But you have a lot more freehand control of it with the Bosch system.
Does that also allow you to really turn around and get to the equator of the piece inside?
It depends on what tool you're using. Stefan, what do you have for turning or for hollowing? What are you using? John Jordan? What tools are you using?
For hollowing. Well, the Lyle Jamieson piece is the one that is held on, it's on the tool rest, and at the other side, it's between two metal pieces so that it does not move up and down.
No, Stefan, I think he's talking about, do you have a swan neck? Or not just a straight piece, but a swan neck piece?
No, I just have a straight piece, and then I need to
Ah.
move the whole big bar, and the
Yeah.
angle is limited.
Okay.
You
So
want
Stefan,
you want to cut it with a
go-
sharp angle to it, or at least a curve back.
Exactly, yeah, I
Yeah.
need that.
get
How-
John Jordan's hollowing his swan necks. Get
Mhm.
those with a handle if you want to do it freehand. And the reason why I say his is because with a set screw, you can take out that cutter and sharpen it. The other ones I've seen require super glue and a heat gun and all sorts of weird stuff. But those John Jordan tools have come in handy for me anyways.
Sounds good.
Well, it sounds like we need to have a breakout session on
Yeah,
that.
that would be a nice one to have.
Yeah. Let's I'll capture that here, and because we talked about that, and is a breakout and or a demo actually on different types of hollowing systems. And to your point, Stefan, this one with a good hollowing system is no problem hollowing out completely. The ones that have a flat top, those are the real challenge. This one, you have some curvature on it, so you can get in there with some curved tools and get that pretty much until you get you get like past about 9 inches, maybe 10 inches in circumference, then it gets to be a big challenge. But up to that point, it's not too bad. Okay, I just made note of that, and so we'll see, maybe we can coordinate something, either breakout and or a breakout and a demonstration both on hollowing.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, if you had hollowed this one too thin at the equator, that spot on the right with the bark would be a hole.
True,
Yeah.
true. Yep.
You mean a chip clearing vehicle?
Yes,
done-
that's the other name for a hole.
This the self-ejecting shavings.
There
Yes,
you go.
And I've done that many times.
those are the
Although
best.
I like that look too,
Yeah,
having the little window is nice.
it sure does make it a lot easier for hollowing when all those chips just fly out the side.
And you can see the thickness of your wall there.
Yeah, true. That's true. All right. Well, thanks for sharing, Stefan, and sharing your process and how you went about doing this and so forth, your challenges on that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Beautiful work.
Thank you.
Mark.
So show the other picture first.
Okay.
Right, so this is a shallow oak bowl. It's 11 by 2.5. My usual finish, which is just walnut oil and wax. So I know not everybody likes oak. Stefan does, and I do.
I like oak when you do it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I know it can be a little bit more trouble than some of the other woods, but man, when it's done, it is just, it has such strength to it. And the surface takes such a nice luster, just that little oil and wax finish really makes it pop. So anyway, about this bowl, it's white oak. I can't tell you exactly what kind. One of the ways you can tell if it's white oak is when you put it on the vacuum chuck. The red oak is just, those tubes are so big that you lose a lot of vacuum with all the air moving through them. And the white oak isn't like that. The white oak has their closed cells, so it does. Anyway, no special tools or anything fancy about this. The one thing that I would point out about this bowl, and look at the other view now, if you would, is the grain pattern that I'm using with the oval in the bottom. So, and maybe this is one of the things that's nice about processing your own wood from logs, is all of my bowls, like this one, is facing out from the tree and it's not facing in. And that just gives a different grain pattern. And actually bowls that face out, so it's basically the same way you do a live edge bowl, except I don't have a live edge. I think they're prettier bowls, and I'm in the minority, so I'm sort of plugging this. I'm lobbying for turning your bowls around the other way. And it's a stronger bowl, so there's another argument for it. But I'm not sure why, but 98% of the bowls I see are facing into the tree. I like them facing out. I love to hear, you get a bigger bowl if you face it in. But
And that's a lot of it right there, Mark. Is
Yeah, I
that
think
maybe-
that's the main reason.
but the other reason too is that it's easier it's easier to give up the pith. And on a bowl like this, you have to get rid of that pith completely, right? Because if you leave much pith in the bottom of that thing, it's going to open up on you on the bottom, right?
Well, right. I mean, the pith isn't in the bottom. The pith is a little bit below the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
But-
it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be very far below it.
Yeah.
On some of my bowls, it's it's within 1/4 of an inch. But as long as the pith doesn't go there,
Yeah.
then you're fine. I mean, it's the same thing going the other way, right? If you face
Yeah.
the bowls down, and if these move at all in service, they tend to get a little bit of a bow to them. It's a little bit different than the peak you get right at the pith when you're doing it the other way.
Mhm.
Anyway, so that's it. It's lovely wood.
Well, one of the questions about this is what did you do after you turned it? I'm assuming wet, correct?
Right.
And between the time you turned it, rough turned it, and let what did you do for drying so that you didn't end up with any cracks?
Right. I think, a few months ago I had shared. So what I do is I use the standard 10% rule,
Mhm.
for the thickness. So if it's a 10-inch blank, then it's going to be an inch thick. And the thing I've done is, well, the whole thing, top and bottom, is anchor sealed. I also cut strips of blue shop towels to go around the edge, so that the edge is coated top and bottom with another layer of shop towel with anchor seal on top of that. Because that's where most of the cracks in this will form, is that rim is just losing. It's just not being able to accommodate the movement of the bowl.
Right.
That's the thing about oak, is it just wants to move a fair
Yeah.
amount, and it will stretch reasonably well and move as long as you can slow it down.
Yeah.
That's
so
the big
now-
thing, is it.
You
if
say
it
you put it
dries
on
fast.
the edge. You just put it on the very edge, or you go down the rim some, or what do you do?
It's like a 3-inch wide
Oh,
piece that sort of encircles the rim.
yeah, like a
Oh.
band then.
Right, it's like a band, and the thing is that you kind of get like 4 layers of anchor seal
Yeah.
with the paper in between,
Yeah.
so it really slows down.
Yeah.
So that's all I do, and I make sure that they're stacked with sticks in between, so they get
Yeah.
air, and
You
I
put it in
let them go.
paper bag or anything, or you cut it, anchor seal it, put the stuff on it, and stick it on the rack.
Right.
Okay.
And then it's been about a year, and I've lost a few to cracks, but like maybe 5% so far. So, I'll report later as I get into more of it. But
Yeah. Nice.
You do this to the rough turn blank you're talking about?
yes,
I've done that with the seal wrap, the packaging wrap. You buy
But
it on a spindle. Just the rim, just the outer rim.
and that works.
It does work.
Okay.
I mean, basically, it slows the outside drying just enough so that the inside can get its job done.
Right, the same idea I came up with. Yeah.
What you say
You-
seal wrap? What, Norm? I'm not sure I know what that is.
You buy a roll of it, usually on a wand. So when you
Plastic
get a
wrap.
pallet, they cover it with that plastic wrap.
Oh, yeah.
You can pick
plastic
that
wrap,
stuff
okay.
up at the store and Amazon
Yeah,
fairly
yeah.
cheaply, and it doesn't. It's people have used it to like keep logs. Yeah, it'll slow the log for like 6 weeks. That's about it.
Mhm,
But for a nice clean surface, it holds a pretty tight seal for months.
mhm. Okay.
Mark, on the edges of your rim, do you leave those sharp or do you round those? Because I started rounding them after I read a couple articles that said that slows down cracking.
Oh, the rough turn piece.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't have a sharp corner on there. That's also what's called a stress riser. That is the point from which the stress will overwhelm the wood. And once, a crack it's like a run in the nylons, once you start, it's going to run. So yeah, I usually, I always cut my edges sharp and then blunt them. Is the last thing I do.
Good point. I don't think I've done that, so, or not consciously done it in the past, so I'll have to remember that.
Yeah, you want it rounded a little bit. Yeah.
All right. You got another piece here. You want to talk about that?
Right. So again, oak. Again, another white oak. What this is 10 by 4.5. So it's a different shape for me.
It really
Yeah, I like
highlights
it.
the medular rays. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That oak really pops. And so if you look at the next picture, it's also, so it's fairly thin. So the challenge with oak is, it does crack. And one of the things is it tends to be heavy. And I was, well, I mean, the wood is heavy, but I don't know why oak things tend to be made clunky. So I was trying to get away from that. So this is fairly thin. I can't tell you exactly how thin, but anyway, so I love this view. It has a round bottom, and like the other piece, the pith is down. And obviously you can see that by this picture, because you're looking right at the end of the log there. But, you guys should consider turning your blanks around just to see if you like it this way. So I've mentioned on the other piece, and it really would show here, the idea of how strong a bowl is. That if you have it face the other direction, where the curve of the bottom bowl is roughly approximating the growth rings. So you could have a bowl that in the one direction might only have 4 or 5 thicknesses or plies thick. Whereas if you do it the other way around, you have all of the growth rings. So, so the difference is like having 4-ply plywood versus 87-ply plywood. So anyway, I like these bowls. Anyway, so same as the other one. I try to be meticulous about my sanding and my shapes. And then I just put a coat of oil and wax on it. So the nice thing then is the finish takes me about 15 minutes, and then it's done.
I really like that starburst effect of the grain.
Isn't,
That's
man,
beautiful.
that stuff is just sweet.
Well, I find, I've turned a lot of oak, a lot of red oak and white oak, not as much white oak, but I find the white oak a lot nicer to turn and a whole lot less cracking than the red oak. The red oak is much more difficult to turn. It makes a mess out of your lathe half the time, stinks half the time, and cracks most of the time. So if you have a choice, I'd pick the white oak any day.
I agree. The white oak is nice, but I don't know, the red oak is fine too.
Well, I'd make a lot, like I said, make a lot of pieces of red oak, but I don't attempt these bigger bowls anymore with the red oak, but I
Okay.
do a lot of smaller pieces with them, and I love it. I love the oak, and I love the medullary rays that you get out of it. It's beautiful stuff. So,
Mark, you gonna
Anyway.
have these at Centerfest?
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Right, and so also, right, and in closing, I'll be at Centerfest with Michael. It's exciting that some of you have said that you'll come out, take a look, support the few of us out there. This is my first full art fair, so I'm
day is it?
excited. Pardon?
What day is it?
Saturday and
Saturday.
Sunday.
Both days?
Yep,
Downtown
downtown Durham. Yep, across from the Durham Arts Center.
If this
Right.
weather holds up, you guys are gonna have a great show.
It's
think so,
supposed to be
too.
gorgeous.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mark is gonna be,
Yeah.
Mark, you're at B1, right?
I'm at B1.
Yep, and I'm at C1, so just do the B and C.
So
Right.
I
Alright.
stepped
For
away
everyone
from
else.
my computer real quick. What show are you guys talking about?
Centerfest.
Centerfest.
Okay, right, right.
All right. Well, good luck to you, Mark, and you too, Michael.
Thank you, guys.
You can. Okay, Norm.
This is a piece that I pulled out mainly for Bob and Michael to say, occasionally I do segmenting.
The Norm way.
No, this is about a little more than 8 years ago. I actually went out to John Campbell for a class that was just getting into resin work. And this is before clear resin was something anyone could get their hands on. And this was just an experiment. I want this photo is up first so that you can see, you were talking about asymmetry before. I love taking a pattern and specifically moving it off center. I think it makes it much more interesting. And the foot kind of shows how far off it is. Because the one thing that you figure out is you can't just move it a little bit off center. You have to move it significantly off center or it just looks like a mistake. So if you flip that around, the next shot, you get a slightly better read of the deconstruction of this. That's all those are both two single pieces of wood. And you can follow.
How do you do that on your wedgie sled?
Yeah. It's a deep cut, man. It's a deep cut. You just draw it out in the bandsaw and cut it up. And it's kind of funny. So this was, I think it's just soft maple or poplar. I don't know. I think where I got the wood. It was an experiment. And you can tell if you look real close at the lines on the resin, it's a ham-handed attempt at filling those gaps. The lines overlap. It's not pretty, but it's been sitting on my shelf for years. And I'm like, I got to either burn this thing or do something with it. So I pulled it out and I tried filling some of the voids with some black CA that I picked up. And it's not bad. I think it's just really interesting. The concept of being, especially with red cedar, which is just so weird to use in this form. But I like the pattern it created. The turning is horrible because I was still a fairly early turner, and the brittleness of the cedar and the softness of the maple made it almost impossible to get clean cuts on it.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I'm surprised the cedar held together.
Yeah, me too.
Yep. Well, and because this was cut, I actually, if you see how I did this, guess what? I have a whole bunch of cedar pie slices that have been sitting around for 7 or so years.
Well,
So
now
I
you
can
gotta
do
cut a
another
piece
one.
now you gotta cut a piece of maple out for the center and put those pie pieces in for the.
Yeah, it's waiting, or just pure resin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say, you should
Yeah.
have both. You should have a bowl that's the opposite effect here too, when you cut it up.
Right. Or at least a piece that I can do. And given that, go to the next one. Because I did that. And this is one piece of mahogany. Again, I consider this a failure, but a mild recovery because I had a lot of problems with this. First, the resin pour failed. And I tried to float some Spectraply shavings in it. And of course, they, under the sheer mass of the resin, they just kind of disintegrated. I was hoping they would keep their like wave form, but they didn't. They just kind of disintegrated into dust. So it's much less interesting than I had envisioned. But still, it's not a bad effect with the light coming through. And as I say, to me, the most interesting thing is how the mahogany grain pattern just travels throughout.
Mm-hmm. I did the same thing with skateboard shavings, thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome. And it turns into a muddy mess.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's got an interesting contrast to it, Norm. Between the mahogany and the essentially inlay. It makes an interesting contrast to it, so it makes the piece attractive.
It almost
that
looks
way.
like a pewter pour or some kind of metallic material.
Yeah.
It looks much better with backlighting. So I had it at an event and it was up on the top shelf and it caught everyone's eye coming in because the light shining through it.
Interesting.
How bad did that chatter while you were turning it?
Oh, that wasn't too bad. But I had that one just had a lot of holes in the resin, and lesson learned. So being a cheap Yankee, when I had this deep blank ready to pour, I said, well, I don't want to waste all this resin. So I went to the the outer rim at the bottom, you know, so it's like a 2-inch deep piece, right? And on the outer rim was all going to be turned away. So I said, I'm going to put some wood wedges down there, so I don't have to spend all that resin in all the slices. Great plan, except I didn't glue them down enough. So a couple of them floated,
Oh,
and I'm chasing it. And I got them all saved, except if you look in that, let's see, the 11 o'clock slot. Can you see that little bit of light color there?
here?
That's a little bit of a maple wedge that I couldn't free.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it's I have a whole, I've got 3 or 4 other similar kind of concepts of bandsawed blanks with to be filled, to have the voids filled. And it's on my list to do. These are too big for, well, this one I could have put in a pressure pot, but I don't have a pressure pot. So I always have that resin risk failure again that I'm chasing against.
11-inch, so that's pretty good size.
Yep. Yeah, the other one was 13.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I got those cedar blanks, and the thing with cedar, it's really good. If you're gonna do this, it's really got to dry. And I figure 8 years is probably enough.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Thank you for sharing that. And your challenge is tribal and with it. So all right, these are mine. So my wife said something about candle holders to me last week, and she said, you know, why don't you make some more candle holders? And I thought, okay, but you know, what style should I make them in? And she didn't have a lot of input to that, but so I decided, well, I'll go try a bunch of different styles and see which one of them, you know, looks better to me, and then maybe make some more of those. And I got I started out actually with this one on the left, and then I don't really have them in order the way I did it. So I did the 2 on the left, which is matching pair, and those are more globe, you might say, or bulb shaped ones. And then I did the one on the far right, where I made it a straight taper on the 2 tops, and then this is kind of rounded, and there's I don't know if you can see it very clearly because the background doesn't help here, a sharper edge right here, you know, at the where the curvature starts. And then I made this smaller one piece, which I tried to create straight, and then a nice curvature in the middle, and then straight back down. And then I made a bigger one, but I made it, instead of completely straight, you can see there's a little bit more rounded curve on it before it goes into into the center before it curves back out again out of it. So a little bit different styles in each of those. I don't know what the next photo is, just a more top. So you can see a little bit more drastic difference actually with this photo between the center one and the far right one on the middle portions of it. And then well, there's here's I did a black background with it as well on that, so you can see it with the black, so you can see the shapes a little bit better. And then I think I did one more, right? No, I guess I didn't. I thought I did. Oh yeah, there we go. Skipped over it. So then these were another shape that I actually did these prior. I didn't do these last week. So this is just a little bit different shape, where this is a little bit more narrow, and this is a little bit more bulb shaped, the one on the right. And then of course the one on the left is a multi-axe piece. So I just thought I'd share these with you and get feedback from you guys and see what which ones you favor.
Oh, the curved ones are really nice.
So first of all, Ted, what's your take on it? I mean, which do you like the best, and
I
why?
actually ended up, the last piece I did was a center one right here, and that one actually ended up being more my favorite one. of the group. And anything I would do, and I'm not sure I would do that, is possibly make the center a touch smaller, but I'm talking like 1/8 of an inch, smaller. But I'm actually pretty happy with this one. I like it. Looks contemporary, more contemporary to me, but yet it has some traditional feel to it with the curvature in the middle versus the smaller one to the right. It's a little bit more completely contemporary, even though there is a curve in the middle. There's a lot of straight contemporary lines to it going down. And
The
my
piece in
wife
the middle is a more interesting piece of wood, but I like the two pieces on the left.
on
The
the left,
form is
yeah,
nicer.
more the bulb shaped, eh?
Can you
Yeah,
go back to the
that
first
form is
picture?
nicer.
Go ahead, Mark.
Can you go back to the first picture?
Mm-hmm. This one?
Right, right. So the one in the middle that you like, I mean, yeah, I mean, I see what you like about it. I think so that you have that narrow part, and then going upward, where it widens out again. The flare kind of goes out, and there's something weird about the transition there, where it
Mhm.
starts to flare out and then it evens up. Like you needed to push that stuff upward a little bit. There's some weight sag there, and I don't know about the relationship between the top part and the bottom part.
Yeah,
The top,
it's hard.
maybe
It's
it
not
looks
a,
a little bit heavy.
yeah, it's not a good proportion on the photo here. I noticed that, but I was trying
the
to catch
angle
the
version.
top. Yeah, I just did it with my phone, so you're right.
Right.
You're right.
I mean, I think it's pretty close. Like maybe the waist could be a little bit higher. But that fourth one too is really lovely. But I would
Yep.
say the same thing about that is, your waist seems to be at about, I don't know, at 55% or 60% or something.
Yeah.
And maybe get it up closer to the 2/3. It doesn't have to be at the 2/3, but just a little, maybe, I don't know.
Well,
But they're really nice.
If it's really just a hair off of dead center, your eye criticizes it all the time.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not. It's probably at 2/3 easily, and actually a little bit more than 2/3
Just
up.
the angle.
It's
photo
just the angle the photo has thrown it off. So it's a good, very valid point. Where the bulb ones, it looks more like that, like it's pushed up, because I think the bottom is so much heavier in the showing here. But you can see that if you look at the middle one, the neck is actually higher up than it is on the ones to the left, right? And it's
Well,
just
the
a
whole
little
thing
bit
is taller.
but the neck is higher, and it's just because of the photo, the proportion of the photo makes it look like that. So,
But
it's
here's
very
my
good
take.
point.
1, 2, and 4 I love, because 1 and 2 are a definitive free curve all the way through, no flaw,
Yep.
no changes. 4 is a definitive straight line.
Yeah,
3 and 5, it's like they're not sure what they want to be.
yeah.
There's a straight part and a curved part, and they don't quite seem to flow well for me.
Yeah.
Any golden mean in those measurements?
Yeah, there is. There is.
You look close.
Or at least I should say I try.
And I think you set us up with this. It's like that expression, everybody has elbows in another part of your anatomy. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on which one they like.
Well, I know that. Yeah, everyone. But I'm just. I guess I'm also just sharing. That I'm trying a bunch of different things to try to sharpen my eye, right? And
Well,
and
that's why we're talking about this. So, right. So, Ron, I appreciate what you say that everybody has an opinion, but not all of them are equal.
Right.
There is art here, and art isn't like a consortium where people make up stupid rules. It's how we view things as animals, and it's the understanding of that to make it pleasing. So, I think it's a really valid discussion, especially in this picture. That center one, the waist has to be higher. And what Norm was saying, you mix different curves and different straights together that don't quite work. But your concept is good.
Hey,
Hey,
Ted,
Ted,
go to your
when
multi-ax.
do you drill your for the candles?
I drill it at the end, just prior to parting it off, really, or I should say a little bit before that. But after I turn it, between centers,
Right.
and then I create a tenon, and then I put it, and then I chuck it, right? And I do the rough turning, you might say, of it before I chuck it, and then I chuck it, and then I finish my form on there, and I do the top to some extent on it, cutting the top, because they're all, you can see they're all curved down in on
Right.
the top. And then I sand it off and everything, and get pretty happy with it. Then the last thing I do is I pull out the tailstock, and I put a drill in the tailstock and pull it up there and drill it out. And it's worked for me fairly well. I mean, I haven't had any issues with it, going off center on me, or, flying off or anything like that. I go slow, I'm probably turning at 400, 450, drilling it. And I drill out that top, and then I back it out, and I have a tailstock live center that has a long pin on it that's about a quarter of an inch big around, and I can stick that right back in that hole, right? Because my drill has left a center down in there, right? I
Yep.
can put that up inside there and hold it, and then I can go to the other end and part it off down to about a half an inch big around, and then stop it, pull the tailstock back, saw it off, and then I created a jam chuck that I can take the other end and stick it into the jam chuck, put it back up to the tailstock if I want to, and clean up the bottom a little bit. I did that on the first couple of them, and after that I decided it wasn't worth it. I just took a sanding to it and sanded it off, and it was fine.
To the point of making them
What was your
functional.
dimension on the smaller one?
It's
For the
about,
hole?
yeah,
7.
it's about, let me see, I got it right
You
here.
said
hold
7
on.
to 12 in the description.
Yeah, that one is actually 8.5 inches. The rest of them are about 12 inches tall. The two on the left are 11 inches tall. And that small one is, I think, about 1.5 inches. Let me just measure here real quick. Oh, it's almost 2 inches big around on the bottom, and the top is about 1 3/4 inches. So not
Okay.
that much difference, which that was one of the things that I didn't like about the small one, is I thought it should have a bigger base on it. It wasn't, and that was to do with the wood. That it just ended up, I couldn't make it any bigger than that. It was just using some scrap wood to try, these experiments, you might say, on it. So it was the limitations of the wood that's prevented me from making the base any larger, but I thought it should be larger.
It doesn't have to be large. Well, visually you may want it larger, but to make them functional, you really want to drill into the bottom a ways and put some lead shot in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I had to do with mine. I made similar shapes, but trying to find the lead shot and get all that in there and have it stay was
Yeah.
a little bit of a challenge.
Just some
Yeah.
But I
epoxy.
love these.
Thank you.
I do like the left two. I'll put my 2 cents worth in.
Hey, Ted, share the multi-axis one again. Yeah. That's my favorite.
Yeah. I like that one too. I've made a few of those. I'd like to make some more because I like it quite a bit. That's white oak also, Mark.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Yeah,
nice grain pattern in it.
yeah.
Well, that's really a skill thing there. That multi-axis is, good
yeah.
for you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are a challenge, and the base, where you see the base and actually the top, the other side of it, you when you get to doing this, you can't cut this clean here, because you're using different axes in it. to create this. So this is a straight axis for the bottom across there, but after you cut this other axis that's going up on the first curvature, you're left with an uneven spot. But believe it or not, it doesn't take much of sanding to just smooth that off, and it looks really nice and clean when you're done. So that's one of the things that I learned when I did this, was I was trying to get the whole thing to come out smooth turning it, and it's impossible to do. You know, you have to do some sanding to smooth that off in the end. And the same on the sides, you know, you can sand a little bit on the sides to even it up so that it comes out proportionally looking, you know, the same on it.
I'd like to see how you did that. That's fascinating.
Well, maybe I'll have to do a demo on it sometime.
Yeah, I'd
Breakout.
like that.
Yeah.
Breakout, yeah.
Yeah, I'd buy a ticket for that.
All right. Well, Michael,
Yeah, I've got it written down.
all right. I guess I'll have to prepare, hey? All
Hey,
right,
Ray,
guys.
Where's
size-
the fun in that?
We got one.
Excuse me, did anyone ask what the size of the candle holes are?
Oh, nice question, Alan. So this is a standard candle hole, and so are all of these except the small one here, which let me just go back to the other picture because I think you can see it better. So these are 1/2-inch candles. I forget what they're called, the type of candle. They're about they're only about 4 inches tall, and they're 1/2 inch big around. Because these are smaller, and same with this one, to try to put a standard sized candle in it,
Oh, yeah,
it's too much, you know, in the smaller candle. It looks better, you know, just looking at it, but also someone, you know, was talking about the weight and so forth, you know, there's not
Sure.
enough weight in it to hold that.
Yeah, gotcha. So it's 1/2 inch for the little ones,
Yep.
and big ones are usually about 3/4 to an inch.
Yeah. But this one here, this multi-axis, there's no weight or anything needed. It's very steady.
Yeah.
There's no issue at all with it, you know, being stable, right? On the table, you know, bumping the table and everything, it's completely stable. Yeah. All right. Good discussion. Thanks, guys, for all the input. I appreciate that. And I'll keep working on, I've got a few other designs in mind, and I actually have another design that I forgot to include, which is another multi-axis, and maybe another time I'll show you what that looks like. And then I think, Norm, you had this you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, so we were so light on photos. I was putting this together. I said, well, I just I've made all these things this last week, so I figured I'd do it. I get kits. I think, hey, these might be interesting, so I pick them up from Penn Supply, Craft Supply. The tweezers were the latest one. It's kind of an interesting offering for folks. Really simple, you know, it's basically pen turning. The crochet needles, and of course the kaleidoscopes. Everybody loves them. They're great to have, and if you're at a booth, it's great to have because the kids come by and the parents say, "Don't touch anything," and you say, "Come here, you can touch this."
Yeah, those are cool.
Very nice, yeah.
And those are all that Spectraply stuff from Cousino.
Yeah, they look nice.
Those others, the tweezers and that hook, those are, that looks like,
That's
cherry.
Paduk, that one. That's
Oh.
Paduk.
Which one?
The red one lying down,
Yeah.
crochet
okay.
hook, but
How about the
everything
one
else.
standing up?
That's Spectraply. That's
Oh,
the
it
nutmeg Spectra. Yeah, I know. It's all brown. They
Oh, okay.
every once in a while they offered it at a discount. I pick them up because they look great. And a lot of people like, you know, the wife gets excited about the color, but then the husband or someone else says, "Yeah, but I like wood," and they
Yeah.
go to that
Yeah, okay.
because
Yeah,
it's brown.
yeah, nice. Okay, well, that's it, folks. Any other